Welcome to another episode of the CEO Pulse podcast. Today we're sitting down with Jeff Osborne. Jeff has over 30 years experience as CEO, VP, and COO in multiple different industries and a very multifaceted entrepreneur experience. So he's been a VP of Lean and Six Sigma at Honeywell, CEO and COO where he's managed over 30,000 employees worldwide. To say the least, Jeff Osborne has been through the ringers, and we're going to tap into the experience that has allowed him to take companies from startup to $500 million in revenue in 5 years. We break down his leadership approach, his management approach, how to figure out and what to do with your areas of improvement. And of course, we're going down the CEO fire drill to break down the real, the raw, and the mindset of his experience. So let's get this show on the road. So glad to have you, Jeff.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
What is one of the biggest things that has led to your success as a CEO?
Biggest things that have led to success. I think there's three things that I would say, in some form or fashion have made my role successful, and what I actually encourage everybody to think about. Number one is focusing on results and not effort. There's been many times where I believe what separates great leaders from good individual contributors is the ability to separate results versus effort. Oftentimes you get in a situation and people are enamored with, I tried really hard. I worked late hours. I traveled a lot. I did this, I did that. And that's the effort part. But being able to know how your clients define value being defined as something they're willing to pay for, right? Value that people are willing to pay for. How do you move the needles on that value? That's the results I'm talking about. The ability to know how you measure success for value and then how you achieve it. Big deal. And even though it sounds simple, it's really difficult. I think it's taken me 25 plus years to really be able to quickly get to what is the value versus the noise and making sure my focus is there. And life is filled with distractions. Business is no different. And so your ability to separate the urgent from the important, the ability to know what specifically today on my calendar, on my agenda is going to move the needle and what is a distraction, and really being able to balance that. So I think that's really key. I think the second thing is self-awareness. I fully believe that great CEOs, great leaders are very self-aware. That means they know their blind spots, they know their issues, they know what they're not good at, and they have the ability to minimize those blind spots and focus on their gifts and their capabilities. So being self-aware and being aligned with that. So I tell people all the time, be yourself, because I've noticed when people try to be others, they read a book or they watch another leader and then they try to emulate that. And being a drone and a clone is not success. Being success is being aligned to who you are. When the inside doesn't align to the outside, that is what causes stress. So the ability to be able to be congruent with who you are, know who you are, be comfortable with what you're good at, be aware of what you're not so you don't continually fall into those blind spots is absolutely essential. And then the third area, which I think is probably the least widely adopted key to success, is work-life blending, work-life balance.
Work-life balance.
Yeah. One of our first breakfast conversations you and I had, we had this conversation of work-life balance. It's just not natural. It is. So leaders, by definition, tend to be type A's. Type A's tend to be drivers. Drivers tend to have no balance in their life. And so at some point they burn out, they hit a dead end, and they lose purpose. These are the folks who at the end of the day, when their career is over, whether it's professional sports or business, whatever it is, kids leave the house, they've completely lost their identity because they don't know who they are. They've confused what they do with who they are. So for me, I don't confuse what I do every day as a leader with who I am as a man. So I want to be in the Husband and Father Hall of Fame. That's my legacy. That's what matters. But when I come to work every day, it's game time, and I put my game face on, but I know how to separate those two things. And I think many people, Rafael, do not appreciate the need. It's not that's a nice thing to do. Work-life blending is essential. Here's what I tell people all the time. If I'm going to ask you, Mr. or Mrs. Accumen, to give me your best, you must be at your best. And so for them to be at their best, they have to know how to disconnect, how to unwind, how to get away. And so it's critical for the long haul for us as leaders to know and have the ability to get away and recharge and refresh. So we're ready to go on Monday morning. I'm ready to go. Not because I'm the Energizer Bunny, because I disconnected on Friday, focused on date nights and volleyball games and all the other things that I have to do, so I can come back ready to go on Monday. Those are the three things.
You have that fresh reset, which is honest. Your whole team can take it from you as well, right?
That's so key. And that's so key. In fact, just yesterday, I had a town hall, what I call a CEO Connect call with the top leaders in the company. And I was explaining to them that our COO isn't in the office for 3 days this week. And it's a little bit of a rarity, trying to get him to make sure he spends time away. But what I did is I told them, Jim is at a science camp with his 10-year-old. Not Jim's out of the office, Jim's not here. And I encourage the leaders to share with their people when they're doing personal things, because they're humanoids. So be transparent, be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to say, I'm here, or I'm there,
spending
or
time with the
I'm
kids,
spending time
with the wife,
right?
Yeah.
They want to. We tend to want to be robots, and we never want to talk about our personal life. So
Right.
I believe as leaders, it is absolutely our job to lead by example when it comes to work-life balance and making sure that we show that vulnerable side, that we need that recharge, we need that refresh. So it allows everyone else to have the freedom to do the same, and they feel very comfortable then talking about, hey, I need to take Friday afternoon off to be with a friend, or whatever the case may be.
And you don't see that culture being applied in a lot of startups. I mean, I'm guilty of it. When I was first getting started, I was, going up against a wall every single day to the period where I did get burnt out. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. It became more of a task. You said something really important right now, and figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Yep.
What would you say that you're not good at?
Well, there's a lot that I'm not good at. But let me tell you, I have a piece about what I'm not good at. And I came to that fairly early in my leadership journey to understand very quickly what I'm not good at, so that I could, balance that, surround myself with people who are good at it. The monotony and the grind will drive me insane, and I am not good at it. I will put off, if I have a list of to-dos and 3 or 4 of them are visionary and they're strategic and they're energizing, to me, I'm all over that. And then the things that absolutely though, but Jeff, you have to do this performance review. You have to fill out this form. You have to go through this budget reconciliation. I will put that off and put that off. So I know my nature of the detail and the tactical, because the world can't operate. CEOs have to be great visionaries. They have to be good at seeing the future. They have to get out in front of it. However, the world does not operate in the sky, right? Right. I mean, if it's all, a vision, you're just dreaming if you're never executing. So I have to be able to surround myself with people who are great executors and who can hold me accountable in those areas. So administration is one of those key areas. When I look at hiring my executive assistants or those that are doing administrative functions, those are critical roles to me. Not, it's just an assistant. Oh, no, critical, because I know my ability to not look ahead. I'll tell my assistant all the time, I will get overwhelmed if I look at my calendar too far out, and it'll freak me out, right? So I look pretty close. So you need to be my eyes, and you need to look out, and you need to make sure you're scheduling downtime for me. If I've got a bunch of calls or I've got performance reviews, please don't do them back to back. You have to give me space, margin. And so I rely on others to create for me, in the administrative world in particular, that which I'm not good at. And I will ignore the details because I hate them, and that will burn me. The details are what kills you, and I'm not good at the details. And so I had to come to grips with that and have a peace with that so that I could bring people around me and just tell them. When I hire assistants or people in the administrative functions, I just tell them, you need to understand something. I'm horrible at this. And I'm horrible at my inbox. And I made the trade-off decision. I don't actually look at it anymore as a weakness. I made the trade-off decision. I can either have an absolutely clean, empty inbox, or I can have balance in my life. Because the only time for me to be able to get that inbox clean would be after the day is done, the calls are done, the meetings are done. And that would directly take time away from my family and me being able to unwind. If all I did is go home and reconnect and try and empty my inbox, it would be an anchor around my neck. So I tell my colleagues, I tell my employees, if you've got something critical, you're going to have to send me a text and tell me to go look at it. So I've worked around those things to let people know, please don't put something in there and expect I'm reading them every day and responding, right? Let me know, help me out, give me signals if it's something of urgency. And so that's one of my weaknesses that I've been able to really, embrace and put in some structure and process to kind of help.
Knowing that you have to delegate stuff like this, somebody else, it frees that memory power or energy to other stuff. Now, being that you have a schedule that's so heavy, how do you handle growth, personal growth, and then new challenges and all that stuff that really consumes your time away from your top priorities, which is yourself and family?
Growth is an interesting thing. Without it, we die. Right. Physically, in business, we die. If we're not growing, we're dying. We're decaying. Unfortunately, there isn't a real good neutral ground. It's kind of like our muscles. We're either working them out and they're getting tone, or they're atrophying. They just don't stay like we wish they would. Business doesn't stay. Our personal growth doesn't stay. It gets stagnant. So we have this, we got to be compelled to grow, not because we're enamored with the accolades of growth, because we know the opposite of growth is decay, is death. And so I think that's why we have to be a constant learner. We have to be a student, most importantly, a student of ourselves, because I feel like most leaders are, they feel like they're so good, and what got me here must be good. I'll just keep doing more of it. And so we stop at some point when we hit a certain level of success of being students of ourselves. Big mistake, I think. I think we got to constantly look in the mirror and ask, what do I need to improve on? Where do I need to grow personally? And if we can take that approach, that growth is continuous improvement, not the acknowledgement that I failed at something, but it's the idea that I must continue to grow. It creates, I think, a habit and a discipline. It's like weeding the garden. We if left to our own devices, our garden will get choked out with all these weeds. And eventually those weeds will take over the growth of the good stuff. And so we've got weeds, and we got to do gardening in our lives. And so personally, I think we have to do that constant weeding, just checking the garden, just walking up and down and saying, I'm getting into some bad habits here. I'm getting a routine of this. So personal growth is to be like weeding the garden. It's critical, and it will help the great things go and the bad things minimize. In business, the entire organization is counting on the leader to be the chief growth officer, the person who must be able to look ahead and find out what are smart risks we should take. Is that good growth? Is that bad growth? Growth is not growth. There's good growth and bad growth, and some growth can destroy a company. And so you have to be incredibly thoughtful about how you disposition growth and how you really assess it and what risks you're willing to take. So you're taking smart risks and not, reckless risks for the business. And so growth is this interesting machine, and it never quits. It's just boom. It just keeps going and keeps going. And you have to stay on the growth train. And I think that's probably the thrill. That's why we do it in some regards, because of the hunt. And the thrill of growth is kind of an adrenaline rush. And it's also can be our demise, because if we don't stop and take the time to pause and reflect on that growth. And should we really enter into that investment? Should we really actually take that client on? Sometimes this is the, I thank God for unanswered prayers. We didn't get a deal at the end of 2016. We were trying to close a healthcare deal in Florida, and it kept delaying, and we were frustrated. We had already told our board, that we thought this one was in the bag. We were selected. We were just going through contracting, and this health system ended up pulling out of the deal. And at first, we were pretty frustrated, but CEO had committed suicide. Board members had resigned. We are so grateful that we didn't get those cooties on us by that client. It is a great example of all growth is not good growth. And so having the ability to discern, sometimes you do it wisely, and sometimes you're just thankful the door closed and you didn't have that, because that could have been a tremendous distraction for us. You never want to end up in the, in the news or in the paper because, you're partnered with, a client that's not a healthy client. So I think growth is always there, and it's something that you got to become friends with, and you got to be able to do it well. There's the knack about, how to do well in feast and famine, and you have to learn how to embrace the growth curve when it's flat or down, and how to really embrace it when it's up. Right now in our business, it's really high. So I'm going to speak to our operations council in a few minutes about them stretching and understanding their limits, and how to make sure that they know how to leverage and do that growth well, and really how to embrace growing pains, because growing pains are better than hunger pains. And so they're both painful, they both hurt, but growth, whether it's personal growth or business growth, is essential. If we don't grow, we don't.
Especially like your analogy about growth being this crazy machine that keeps going. Either you get on board with it, or you get
runs you over.
Ran over
exactly.
by it, literally.
That's right.
Now, with growth, there's always new opportunities that come along with it. We all have that thought of fear, or that feeling of fear of jumping into something new.
How much of it is nature and how much of it is nurture? Are leaders born or are they grown? I'm pretty sure for the most part, they're grown. I understand there's some innate capabilities that some people have, but most, when a baby's born, they don't pop out and the doctor goes, guess what? It's a leader. You don't see that.
I love that.
You grow and you learn. And I think for me, in the early days, because my left brain always sort of a little bit towards the engineering side, I would overthink spreadsheets on whether I should get this cell phone plan or that cell phone plan. And for me, high analytical, I could get lost and paralyzed in the ability to make decisions. Not that that's ever a bad thing, because you need that good, solid analysis. But in the end of the day, the decision is going to be made. You're going to have to discern, and there's going to be a gut piece of it, and there's going to be a risk piece of it. That's the piece that I think is you're either adverse to risk or you embrace it. I happen to embrace it. I've always been a risk taker, and I'm not sure if you're not a risk taker, you'll ever really be good at making fast and clear decisions. I think clarity is a gift. We need to get through the morass of all of the analytics and what ifs and this and that. Yep, there's a lot of what ifs. At the end of the day, you have to take a risk. You have to take a chance. You have to believe. Fear is a crazy, paralyzing force. Fear will cause us to be inactive. It just does. It causes us to paralyze. And we've all experienced it. We all know it.
The infamous analysis paralysis, right?
It is. And fear. And usually we're analyzing because we're afraid we don't want to make the wrong choice. As a leader, I came to this conclusion early on, I think I'd rather make 10 decisions and know that 7 of them are going to be right and 3 are going to be wrong, than make one decision and be 100% right all the time and never move the ball down the field. You have to take risk. You have to move. So you're constantly balancing as a leader the trade-off of inactivity and analysis versus taking some calculated risk and moving. because I believe that you have, unless it's a critical, what I call risk the business decision, where the decision is going to shut down. These decisions aren't as big as we make them out to be. The risks aren't as scary as we think. If we let them grow, they turn into the boogeyman and they get big and scary. And the reality is, in most risks, it's just a course. Take the course, and if it doesn't work, change course and correct and be nimble. So I found, rather than sitting and trying to analyze and get the perfect decision, be better at nimbleness, the ability to move and take a course and change course and course correct and redirect and move. Because then you're constantly moving versus sitting there wondering, well, you think this will work out? Well, let me tell you, there's one way to find out. Go. Not recklessly, not crazy, not blindly. Go. Not risk the business, not risk your life kind of decisions, but decisions that aren't quite me getting the right cell phone plan, probably not a really big decision. and we got to be careful that we as leaders aren't worried about failure. See, there's the underlying fear is fear of failure. It really isn't, am I afraid to take a risk? It's, am I afraid to fail? And if we learn to fail forward, and we learn these are failures with a small f, not a capital F, little failures, they're just a course, and you just correct, and you go around detours, and you see them all the time. I came from aviation, and in the aviation industry, the pilots have a flight plan, and they have a perfect flight plan that has a perfect set of waypoints that they're going to take with the right amount of airspeed and fuel burn. What happens? The minute they get up in the air, that changes because they find weather, and they have to course correct. They have to go around it, and they use their instrument panel to let them know what's ahead, and then they work around it to minimize the turbulence and get to the destination safely. That's our job as leaders, to do that very same thing.
If you were walking down the street right now and ran into your 17-year-old self, what advice or life lesson would you teach that kid?
Ooh-wee. Well, the first thing I'd tell that 17-year-old is get a haircut. Get a haircut.
I've heard about that.
I had long hair back then. It was crazy. Get a haircut, But yeah. I honestly think I would tell myself, Jeff, follow your passion. I think I started my journey trying to figure it out. So people would say, Jeff, you're going to school to be an engineer. What, is that what you want to be? And I said, no, I really don't know what I want to be. And so I had this Rubik's Cube in front of me, Rafael, and I thought my job was to figure out how to solve this Rubik's Cube. And it wasn't. My job was to live the adventure, to get on the journey and not worry so much about a career path or progression or promotion. And I quickly stopped the whole idea of let's go be successful. And then I started to realize, will I follow my passions? Will I find out my passions so I can follow them? Most of us don't even know what our passions are anymore.
You're right.
When we're 17, we still have them. They're still real, and they're still right in front of us, and we're ready to take on the world. And then responsibility comes, and we start to do what we are supposed to do, not what we were meant to do. And so we begin following a form, and we become drones and clones because we start doing what the world tells us we need to do.
Based
you need to get a good job. Right. You need to be, don't take that risk, Rafael. That's crazy. You need to have a good job. You need to work for the state where they have a pension and they have a retirement. And we hear these voices from people that love us, friends, family, everybody. Right. And we listen. And what do we do with our passion? We push it down. We keep pushing. And pretty soon, it is so deep, we don't even have it anymore. It's there. We pushed it down. We've suppressed our passion.
It's dormant.
I believe it's critical for us. And I would tell my 17-year-old self, Jeff, listen to your passion. Follow your passion. If you do that, you cannot fail. Because I love this, and this is my most favorite quote. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because the world needs more people who have come alive. We need passionate people. When you find someone of passion, You can't contain them. I don't care what it's about. They're on a mission.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's contagious.
Exactly.
I mean, you want some of that. You're like, okay, I don't know where you got that,
what is drinking,
or
but
what you're drinking or smoking, but I need some of that because most of us are burned out. We're retired in place. We're just going through the motions now.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're making a living, but we're not making a life. We're not out there taking any risk, and we're not going for it. And so I would tell my 17-year-old self, Jeff, find your passions, take a risk, take the adventure. Don't try and solve this. This is not a quadratic equation. You can't solve it with your left brain. You have to experience it with your right brain. You have to go and live this life and see, at some point there's going to be doors that close, but when they close, there's a window that's going to open, and just trust the process and go through it. Because I learned as much from my failures in those areas than I did from my success.
Through experience, right? You probably wouldn't have gotten a haircut either, but
I probably would. I probably would have though.
Life can become so transactional. We were just talking about this right before we started recording, and literally getting to that burnout stage. When I was 14, I used to own the world.
Yeah.
What is alive there? It's not necessarily arrogance, but it's that dream. It's that hunger for the pursuit and joyful feeling of being alive and possibilities that can come. Do you have any closing thoughts for our audience?
Well, I would just encourage leaders to understand leadership is a series of decisions. It's a series of choices. It's a set of behaviors. It's not a destination. It's not a position. It's not a title. It's not money. It is the ability to make wise choices. And the key is wise choices. And I think for all of us, we always think we're smarter than we are. And wisdom has nothing to do with book smarts. It's nothing to do with anything other than, can we make wise choices? And I just think our world is nothing, our life is nothing but a collection of choices. So as leaders, I always tell people, make the next right choice. Forget about the bad choices. We've got a ton of them. We've got a stockpile of bad choices. Everybody does. Make the next right choice. Be intentional about making the next right choice. There is a world of difference between leaders with good intentions. There'll be people listening to this podcast who will have the intention, oh yeah, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to follow my passions. I'm going to do this. And it'll never happen because the inability for them to make the next right choice. There's a world between leaders with good intentions and intentional leaders. So my advice would be an intentional leader. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's big or small. It doesn't have to change the planet. But be an intentional leader. Make the next right choice. If you do that, you will create a muscle memory. You will create a habit. You will create a discipline of making the next right choice. And when you do that, whatever life throws your way, challenges that will come, disappointments will happen, failures will occur. But if you're an intentional leader and you make the next right choice, you'll get up, you'll fight, and you'll grow, and you'll live to see another day. That's my advice.
And I can't thank you enough, really. Just, there you have it, guys. Make the next right choice. I want to be respectful of your time. So as we get ready to wrap up, do you have any good resources for growth and development and leadership?
Sure. That is another great point about leadership, because it's a journey, because it's a whole series of learnings and growing. If we think we're going to sit in a smoke-filled room and figure it out for ourselves, we're kidding ourselves. You constantly, in fact, every morning I spend a little bit of time, with leadership, nuggets, devotions. I'm constantly listening to podcasts and quips and quotes and devotions. One of my favorite is John Maxwell. I love John Maxwell. He is the absolute best leadership guru. He spent his entire life on leadership, and he is just an incredible repository. He's written over 50 books. He's got a new book coming out called No Limits, and it talks about this whole idea of not capping your capability. But he also has a daily. He has something called The Minute with Maxwell, a daily little 1-minute video clip on your computer. I love Maxwell. I think he's great. The second one for me is Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership. I listened to the podcast. I listened to Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership. Again, video clips. Those are the things, and they always help me sharpen the saw. So I'm always looking for something that's a nugget, because it has to be kind of quick for me. I'm not a guy who's going to sit down and read, volumes of books. I need clips and I need things that I can read and learn. But those two, I thought, have had a tremendous amount of wisdom and advice, and I relish the learnings from those two, Dave Ramsey and John Maxwell.
You just got a backstage pass to the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. Make sure you follow us on YouTube and iTunes, and check out our website at ceopulse.com. Stay tuned, stay focused, you got this.